The massive Imperial ships appeared suddenly, their dark hulls blocking out the stars as they emerged from faster-than-light travel near Jupiter's orbit. Earth's long-range sensors picked them up immediately, sending automated alerts across every military command center on the planet and its colonies. Admiral James Walker stood on the bridge of the EDF Defender, Earth's flagship, watching the tactical display with careful eyes. After 20 years of space exploration and building up their defenses, humanity had always known this day would come. First contact with a major galactic power was inevitable. They just hadn't expected it to happen quite like this. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," reported Lieutenant Tom Roberts from his communications station. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Walker nodded, straightening his uniform. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall, humanoid figure in an ornate military uniform. Commander Reed of the Imperial Scout Fleet looked down at them, with the practiced disdain of someone used to dealing with what he considered lesser beings. "Primitive species of Sol 3, Reed began, not even bothering to use Earth's proper name. "You are now in the presence of the Galactic Empire's superior fleet. Your system lies within Imperial space. You will submit to Imperial authority immediately and prepare for integration into the Empire's administrative structure." Walker kept his face neutral, though inside he felt a mix of anger and amusement. The Empire had clearly done their homework poorly. "Commander Reed," he replied calmly, using the alien's name and rank to show they weren't as primitive as assumed. "Earth welcomes peaceful contact with the Galactic Empire. However, we are an independent sovereign species. We're happy to discuss diplomatic relations as equals." Reed's expression shifted to one of surprise before quickly returning to contempt. "You mistake your position, human. This is not a negotiation. Our scans show your technology is barely spacefaring. You have no faster-than-light capabilities that we can detect. Submit, or face the consequences." What Reed didn't know, what his scans couldn't show him, was that humanity had developed their technology along very different lines than the Empire. They had focused on stealth, quantum mechanics, and dimensional physics rather than brute force and visible power. The massive ships Earth could field were hidden away, and their FTL technology operated on principles the Empire hadn't even discovered yet. "I must insist you reconsider your approach," Walker said firmly. "Earth has no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Perhaps we could arrange a diplomatic meeting to discuss." "Enough," Reed cut him off. "Your defiance is noted. We will make an example of your orbital stations first. After your populations see their destruction, they will understand the futility of resistance." The transmission cut off. Walker sighed, then pressed a button on his command chair. "All stations, battle alert. This is not a drill. Activate Defense Protocol Alpha 7. Let's show our guests why it's unwise to underestimate humanity." Around the Earth, hidden defense platforms began powering up. The civilian stations that Reed had threatened were already evacuating into concealed bunkers, leaving behind convincing holograms. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this possibility, and they weren't about to let their first contact with a galactic power end in submission. The Imperial ships moved forward, their weapons charging. They expected a quick and easy victory over a primitive species. What they got instead was their first lesson in why humanity had survived countless extinctions, ice ages, and their own destructive tendencies to make it to the stars. As the first Imperial shots fired, Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Empire was about to learn that appearances could be deceiving, and that humanity was far from primitive. The real question was how much damage the Empire would take before they realized their mistake. "All ships," Walker commanded, "execute defensive pattern Delta. Show them what Earth can do." The battle for humanity's independence was about to begin, and Earth had no intention of losing. The red dust of Mars swirled around the colony domes, carried by the planet's thin winds. Colonel Maria Torres watched from her underground command center as the Imperial ships entered Mars orbit. Their first attack on Earth had failed spectacularly, and now they were trying their luck with what they assumed was a weaker target. "They're positioning themselves for a ground assault," reported Captain Mike Brown, pointing at the tactical display. 5 main ships, probably carrying about 2,000 troops each. Torres nodded, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the screens. "Just as we predicted. They think Mars is defenseless." She pressed a button on her command console. "All units, take your positions. Remember your training. Let them land first." The Imperial ships descended through the thin Martian atmosphere, their massive hulls casting long shadows over the colony domes. They landed in a perfect formation, just as their military doctrine demanded. It was exactly what Torres had been counting on. As the Imperial troops began to deploy, marching out in neat rows, Torres allowed herself a small smile. "Begin Operation Dust Devil." Suddenly, the Martian winds picked up dramatically. Hidden weather control stations, built deep underground years ago, created a massive dust storm. The Imperial troops' fancy sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and standard military threats, were useless against the natural phenomenon. "Now," Torres commanded. From hidden bunkers beneath the Martian surface, hundreds of human soldiers in specially designed combat suits emerged. They moved like ghosts through the red storm, their suits perfectly adapted to the harsh Martian environment. Years of living on Mars had taught them how to use its dangers as weapons. The Imperial troops, caught off guard, tried to maintain their rigid formations, but their training hadn't prepared them for anything like this. Their equipment, while advanced, had been designed for standard combat in normal conditions. The fine Martian dust was already beginning to clog their systems. "Team Alpha, hit their left flank," Torres ordered. "Team Beta, take out their command vehicles." Human soldiers, using magnetic grappling systems, scaled the sides of the Imperial ships with practiced ease. They planted powerful mining charges, tools converted to weapons by creative colonists, at key structural points. The Imperial commanders finally realized they were under attack, but their response was slow and confused. They couldn't see their enemies through the storm, and their usual battle tactics were useless in these conditions. "They're trying to take off," someone shouted. "Perfect," Torres replied. "Detonate the charges." The explosions ripped through 3 of the Imperial ships, leaving them grounded. The other 2 managed to lift off, but they had barely reached the upper atmosphere when Mars' hidden defense platforms revealed themselves. Disguised as ordinary communication towers and storage facilities, they now showed their true purpose. Energy beams sliced through the escaping ships, cutting them into pieces that rained down onto the red planet's surface. Below, the stranded Imperial troops found themselves surrounded by hostile terrain and invisible enemies who knew every crater and canyon like the backs of their hands. "Ma'am," Captain Brown reported, "the enemy is requesting terms for surrender." Torres stood up from her command chair. "Tell them we accept, and make sure they understand. Mars never was the weak target they thought it was. We're colonists, yes, but that just means we're tougher than they could imagine." As the dust storm began to settle, revealing the scattered and defeated Imperial forces, Torres looked at the casualty reports. Thanks to their preparation and knowledge of the terrain, human losses had been minimal. The Empire had learned a costly lesson about underestimating Martian colonists. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them Mars is secure, and suggest they warn the Empire. If they thought we were tough in space, they really shouldn't test us on our own worlds." The Battle of Mars was over, but Torres knew this was just the beginning. The Empire wouldn't take this defeat lightly, but that was fine. Mars and its people would be ready for them. Grand Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominion, his gray eyes fixed on the blue planet he had once called home. 20 years ago, he had left Earth, believing humanity was too primitive and short-sighted. He had defected to the Empire, thinking he was joining the winning side. Now, he had returned to prove he had made the right choice. "Their defenses are stronger than we expected," he told the gathered Imperial commanders through the holographic display. But I know how humans think. They're still the same creatures who fight among themselves over tiny pieces of land and ancient grudges. The Imperial High Command had chosen Thompson specifically for this mission after their earlier failures. Who better to defeat humanity than one of their own? He had spent years climbing the Imperial ranks, and now he would show everyone his true worth. Begin the attack, Thompson ordered. Target their orbital stations first. Without their space infrastructure, they'll be crippled. The massive Imperial fleet moved forward, nearly 1,000 ships strong. This wasn't a scouting force or a colonial fleet. This was the Empire's main battle group, capable of subduing entire star systems. From his command post on Earth, Admiral Walker watched the approaching armada with growing concern. They brought him, he said quietly, recognizing the attack pattern. Thompson finally came home. The Imperial fleet split into 3 groups, just as Thompson had planned. He knew Earth's defensive capabilities, or thought he did, based on what he'd known before leaving. The first wave of attacks hit the orbital stations, and massive explosions lit up the night sky. "Sir," an Imperial officer reported to Thompson, "the stations are being destroyed exactly as planned." Thompson nodded, but something felt wrong. The victories were coming too easily. He remembered Earth's military leaders. They were never this predictable. "Scan for any unusual energy readings," he ordered. But it was too late. His gut feeling had come 20 years too late. The apparently destroyed stations flickered and vanished. They were holograms, just like the ones that had fooled the first Imperial attack. The real stations had been moved weeks ago, hidden behind advanced cloaking technology that hadn't existed in Thompson's time. "It's a trap," Thompson shouted, but his warning was drowned out by the sounds of alarms blaring across the fleet. Earth's real defense platforms, hidden in plain sight, powered up all at once. They had let the Imperial fleet come deep into their web, and now they would show them how much humanity had advanced. Quantum-tipped missiles, technology Thompson had never seen before, phased through Imperial shields as if they weren't there. Advanced eye-driven fighters swarmed out from hidden hangars, their pilots neural-linked to their ships in ways the Empire had never imagined possible. "Impossible," Thompson whispered, watching his carefully planned attack fall apart. They couldn't have advanced this much. Not in 20 years. But they had. While Thompson had been learning the Empire's ways, humanity had been preparing, innovating, and developing technologies that worked on completely different principles than the Empire's. "Full retreat," Thompson ordered, but the Imperial fleet's rigid formation worked against them. Their ships couldn't turn quickly enough without colliding with each other. Earth's forces, more nimble and adaptable, pressed their advantage. In just 30 minutes, Thompson watched a third of his fleet destroyed or disabled. The Empire's greatest armada was being taken apart by the very primitives he had dismissed so long ago. "Perhaps," Thompson thought as he ordered another retreat, "I chose the wrong side after all." The Empire's escalation had failed spectacularly, but this was just the beginning. Thompson knew the Empire would never accept this defeat. They would come back with everything they had. But for the first time, he wasn't sure that would be enough to defeat Earth. Humanity had changed while he was gone, grown in ways he had never imagined possible. And now he, along with the entire Empire, was about to learn just how costly his underestimation had been. Dr. Alan Pierce stood in the hidden control room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by walls of glowing screens and humming quantum computers. For 15 years, he had led Project Phoenix, keeping it so secret that even most of Earth's military didn't know it existed. Now, it was time to show the Empire why you should never corner a human. "All systems are ready," his assistant Robert said, checking the final diagnostics. "Should we inform Admiral Walker?" Pierce nodded, his tired eyes reflecting the blue light of the screens. "Send the signal. It's time to show them what we've been building." In orbit, Admiral Walker received the message he had been waiting for. The Empire's fleet, despite their recent defeat, was regrouping for another attack. This time, they would hold nothing back, but neither would Earth. "This is Admiral Walker to all Earth forces," he announced on a secure channel. "Initiate Project Phoenix. Authorization code. Lazarus Rising. Around the Earth, in space, and even in the seemingly empty areas between planets, hundreds of hidden quantum sensors activated. These sensors weren't just detecting devices. They were doorways to something the Empire had thought impossible." In his command center, Pierce pressed his hand against the main control panel. "Initiating dimensional shift. Opening pocket spaces now." The Empire's sensors lit up with thousands of warnings. Where there had been empty space moments before, massive ships and battle stations now appeared. They seemed to fold into existence from nowhere, emerging from invisible doorways in space itself. "Sir," an Imperial officer shouted to Thompson. "Unknown vessels appearing everywhere. Our sensors. This is impossible. They're coming from some kind of dimensional pocket." Thompson stared at his displays in disbelief. The Empire had theorized about pocket dimensions, hidden spaces tucked away in the folds of reality, but they had concluded it was impossible to create stable ones, let alone use them for military purposes. In his mountain base, Pierce explained to his team what they were seeing. "We never tried to match the Empire's regular technology," he said. "We knew we couldn't compete with their 1,000 years of development, so we went in a different direction. While they focused on making bigger ships and stronger weapons, we learned to hide entire fleets in spaces between spaces." The Phoenix fleet was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. The ships were built with technology that ignored conventional physics. They could appear and disappear at will, moving through dimensions instead of normal space. Their weapons fired from one pocket dimension and emerged in another, making them impossible to block or dodge. "My God," Thompson whispered, watching the impossible fleet surround his forces. "All this time, they weren't just hiding their strength. They were hiding in ways we never imagined possible." Pierce activated the communication system. "This is Dr. Alan Pierce of Earth's Defense Science Division. Your Empire thought we were primitive because we didn't follow your path of technological development. But humans have always been good at finding different ways to solve problems." The Phoenix ships moved into attack formation. Each one could instantly teleport through pocket dimensions, appearing anywhere they wanted. The Empire's mighty fleet, with all its conventional technology, suddenly looked old and outdated. "The pocket dimensions aren't just for ships," Pierce continued, allowing himself a small smile. "We've been building and storing weapons, supplies, and entire bases in them for years. Everything you've seen of Earth's military until now has just been what we wanted you to see." As if to prove his point, more structures appeared throughout the solar system. Hidden bases, defense platforms, and weapon systems emerged from their dimensional hiding places, surrounding the Imperial fleet completely. The Empire's greatest armada now found itself trapped by technology they hadn't believed possible. Humanity's greatest secret was finally revealed, and with it, the balance of power in the galaxy was about to change forever. Admiral Walker stood on his new bridge aboard the Phoenix flagship, Humanity's Dawn, watching as his fleet emerged from their dimensional pockets around the Imperial forces. The massive ship hummed with power that the Empire's sensors couldn't even detect, its quantum engines ready to tear holes through space itself. "All Phoenix ships report ready," Captain Lisa Moore announced from her station. "The Empire's fleet is completely surrounded." Walker nodded, his expression firm. They had waited years for this moment. "Begin attack pattern Omega," he ordered. "Show them why you don't corner a species that survived an ice age, with nothing but sharp sticks and determination." The Phoenix fleet moved with impossible grace. Ships blinked in and out of existence, appearing behind Imperial vessels, firing, and vanishing before the Empire could respond. The dimensional technology meant that traditional space combat tactics were useless. There was no behind or above, when ships could appear from any direction at any time. In his flagship, Grand Admiral Thompson watched in horror as his carefully organized fleet formation fell apart. "Redirect all power to shields," he shouted. "Maintain battle formation Delta." But the Empire's rigid battle formations, drilled into their soldiers over centuries, were now their greatest weakness. While Imperial ships tried to maintain their perfect lines and positions, Earth's vessels danced through dimensions around them, striking from impossible angles. "Sir," an Imperial officer called out, "3 more ships lost in Sector 7. We can't track their attack patterns. They're not following any known combat doctrine." Thompson gripped his command chair tightly. Of course they weren't following known doctrine. Humans never did. He had forgotten that in his years with the Empire, humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their ability to throw away the rulebook and try the impossible. On the humanity's dawn, Walker directed the battle with the skill of someone who had trained for years for this exact moment. "Teams Alpha and Beta, execute pincer movement through pocket dimension C7, he commanded. "Team Charlie, prepare for temporal flanking maneuver." The Phoenix ships split into groups, some vanishing into dimensional pockets while others provided covering fire. When they re-emerged, they had effectively turned the Empire's own formation into a trap. Imperial ships found themselves firing at enemies that simply weren't there anymore, their shots passing through empty space, while attacks came from directions they couldn't defend against. "This is impossible," Thompson shouted as another wave of his ships fell to the dimensional attacks. "No species should be able to fight like this. There are rules to space combat." "That's where you went wrong, Thompson," Walker replied over an open channel. "Humans don't believe in following other people's rules. We make our own." The Phoenix fleet's attacks grew more coordinated. Ships would appear simultaneously from multiple pocket dimensions, fire their quantum-linked weapons, and vanish before the Empire's return fire could reach them. The Imperial fleet's advanced shields meant nothing against weapons that simply bypassed normal space to strike their targets. "Admiral Walker," Captain Moore reported, "the enemy fleet is down to 60% strength. They're trying to retreat, but our dimensional net has them trapped." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Send word to all ships. Execute final phase. Let's show the Empire exactly what humanity can do when pushed too far." The Phoenix fleet's final attack was a symphony of impossible movements and devastating strikes. Ships appeared and disappeared in perfect coordination, their quantum weapons ripping through the Empire's finest vessels like paper. The mighty Imperial Armada, pride of the galaxy, was being systematically taken apart by tactics they couldn't even understand. Thompson watched his fleet crumbling around him, finally understanding the truth. He hadn't joined a superior force by defecting to the Empire. He had abandoned the most innovative and adaptable species in the galaxy. And now, that species was about to change the balance of power forever. Grand Admiral Thompson watched as his mighty fleet fell apart around him. The Empire's ships, once arranged in perfect formation, now scattered like leaves in a storm. Emergency alarms blared throughout his flagship as more and more vessels reported critical damage or total system failures. "My lord," his second-in-command reported, fear clear in his voice, "we've lost contact with the entire 3rd Battle Group. The 4th and 5th are reporting massive casualties. Our formations are completely broken." Thompson slumped in his command chair, watching the tactical displays show more and more of his ships going dark. The Empire had trained its forces to fight in strict patterns, to follow time-tested battle plans. But humanity's dimensional warfare had made all of that useless. How do you fight an enemy that could appear anywhere, strike from impossible angles, and vanish before you could respond? On the bridge of humanity's dawn, Admiral Walker coordinated the final phase of the battle. "All ships, execute pattern Zulu. Let's finish this." The Phoenix fleet moved like a perfectly choreographed dance. Ships jumped through dimensional pockets, appearing in 3 places at once, firing their quantum weapons before sliding back into hidden space. The Empire's rigid command structure couldn't adapt fast enough to counter attacks that broke every rule of conventional space combat. "Sir," an Imperial officer shouted to Thompson, "the humans, they're not just using their technology better than us. They're improvising, creating new attack patterns we've never seen before." Every time we adapt to one strategy, they change to something completely different. Thompson nodded slowly. That was humanity's true strength, not their dimensional technology, but their incredible ability to adapt and innovate. The Empire had spent centuries perfecting their military doctrine, but humans simply made up new rules as they went along. The Imperial fleet's communication network began to break down. Without the ability to coordinate their movements, individual ship captains had to make their own decisions, something their training had never prepared them for. Some tried to retreat, others attempted to maintain formation, and a few brave ones tried to copy humanity's irregular attack patterns. The result was chaos. Admiral Captain Moore reported to Walker, "We're detecting multiple power surges in the Imperial fleet. It looks like their command and control systems are failing." Walker watched as the mighty Imperial Armada descended into disarray. "This is what happens when you build an empire on rigid rules and absolute obedience," he said quietly. "One new idea, one unexpected strategy, and the whole thing falls apart." Thompson's flagship shuddered as another quantum blast phased through their shields, taking out their main power core. As emergency systems kicked in, he finally understood his mistake. In all his years with the Empire, he had forgotten the most important thing about his own species. Humans didn't play by others' rules. "All Imperial forces," Thompson broadcast on an open channel, his voice heavy with defeat. "This is Grand Admiral Thompson. Our tactics have failed. Our formations are broken. We have lost over 70% of our fleet." He paused, looking at the Earth floating in the distance. "I hereby order all surviving ships to stand down. The Empire has lost this battle." The surviving Imperial ships powered down their weapons. Around them, the Phoenix fleet maintained their positions, dimensional portals still swirling with energy, ready to strike if needed. In his mountain command center, Dr. Pierce watched the sensors confirm the Imperial surrender. "It's done," he said to his team. "The Empire just learned why you don't underestimate humans. We might not be the strongest or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we're certainly the most stubborn and creative." The Empire's greatest fleet had been defeated, not just by advanced technology, but by humanity's eternal refusal to accept limitations or follow someone else's rules. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Great Hall of the United Earth Government building in Geneva was packed with representatives from both Earth and the Empire. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, falling on the defeated form of Grand Admiral Thompson and the proud stance of Admiral Walker. The Empire's delegation sat on one side, their once pristine uniforms showing signs of battle damage. Earth's leaders sat opposite them, their faces stern but not triumphant. Admiral Walker stood at the central podium, his voice clear and strong as he addressed both sides. "Today marks a turning point in galactic history," he began. "Not because of who won or lost, but because of what this battle has taught us all." The Imperial representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their mighty fleet, or what remained of it, hung in orbit above Earth, now surrounded by humanity's dimensional ships. The Phoenix fleet's capabilities were no longer a secret, but that didn't make them any less intimidating. Humanity could continue this fight, Walker continued. "We could push beyond our solar system, use our dimensional technology to strike at the heart of your empire. We could do what you intended to do to us. Conquer, subjugate, rule." He paused, looking directly at the Imperial delegation. "But that's not who we are." Dr. Pierce stood up next, holding a data crystal containing the specifications of some of humanity's basic dimensional technology. "We're offering you a choice," he said. "Not surrender, not submission, but partnership. We've proven we can destroy your fleets, but we'd rather share our knowledge and help build a better galaxy." Thompson, who had requested to join the Imperial delegation despite his defeat, found himself nodding. He finally understood what he had forgotten during his years with the Empire. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight, but their ability to forgive and adapt. However, Walker's voice turned stern. "Let this be our final warning to the Empire. Never again mistake our desire for peace as weakness. Never again assume that because we do things differently, we are primitive or inferior. The next time you send a fleet to our space, we won't be so merciful. To demonstrate his point, he nodded to Dr. Pierce, who activated a holographic display. It showed hundreds of dimensional pockets opening simultaneously throughout the solar system, revealing just a fraction of humanity's hidden capabilities. Weapons platforms, defense systems, and ships that made the Phoenix fleet look primitive appeared briefly before vanishing again. What you fought, Pierce explained, was only our first line of defense. We have technology that makes dimensional shifting look simple. We have weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. We don't want to use them, but we will if we must. The Imperial delegation whispered among themselves, their faces showing a mixture of fear and awe. They had come expecting to find a primitive species worthy only of conquest. Instead, they had found equals, perhaps even superiors, who were offering them friendship despite their actions. The choice is yours, Walker concluded. Return to your empire. Tell them what you've seen here. Tell them that Earth extends its hand in peace and cooperation, but will never bow to threats or intimidation. Tell them that humanity is ready to join the galactic community, not as subjects, but as equals. As the Imperial delegation prepared to leave, Thompson approached Walker. I forgot something important during my years with the Empire, he said quietly. I forgot that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our ability to fight. It's our capacity to imagine a better future and work towards it, even with those who once tried to destroy us. Walker nodded, watching as Earth's ships prepared to escort the Imperial delegation home. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would help shape that change, not through conquest or domination, but through innovation, adaptation, and the stubborn belief that different species could work together for a better future. The warning had been delivered. Now it was up to the Empire to decide what kind of galaxy it wanted to live in.